Just one more hour until reinforcements, aka me, arrive to save the day. But until then, keep your eyes on the highway and keep on trucking with Jimmy Mack on Road Gang Radio, y'all.
I don't know if you know this, Dre, by the way, Robert Braswell and my Uncle Terry have something in common. They are both graduates of the University of Maryland at College Park in one way or another. Yeah, Terry, by the way, my uncle just retired from Tulane University as a full professor of American history with a particular focus on the Irish-American experience in New Orleans. Robert is as much of a smarty pants as he is. He's the executive director for ATA's Technology and Maintenance Council. He's responsible, by the way, for you guys who don't know, his bona fides, he doesn't toot his own horn, for ensuring the effectiveness of all TMC programs, products, meetings, and services covering all aspects of light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles, engineering, maintenance, and maintenance management. That's why he is such a darn good expert on all of this. And this, of course, is the longest-running segment of any show on RadioNemo.com, all the way back to its XM days. And as a contributor, Robert Braswell joins us for another edition of Tech Talk with TMC. It's good to have you. Happy day before Thanksgiving, my friend.
Happy penultimate day before Thanksgiving. Back to you, boy. With that buildup, it's quite a pressure for me to deliver today. Well, thanks for that great introduction. And one of the things we're going to be delivering for our listening audience today is a fantastic topic, and it is a technology to be thankful for, and that's retreads. And for really good reasons, Jimmy Mack. You know, retreads are one of the trucking industry's earliest examples of planned sustainability and vehicle operation. And that goes back, wow, geez, almost to the beginning of tires and trucking. And it's just gotten better over the years. And they get a bad rap. We're going to talk about why that's not fair and why retreads are a really, really, really good environmental friendly and safe operational choice to make in trucking operations. And joining us this week, we are very pleased to welcome to the program Dan Shy, who's a technical account manager for the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. He's going to be sharing with us information on what fleets and drivers need to know about retreads as we approach 2026. You know, Dan is one of the folks who literally helps us write the book when it comes to tire and wheel maintenance. And we're looking forward to him discussing what new developments are happening in this important area and much, much more, all about the subject of retreads. But before we bring Dan on, of course, each week we like to make a special offer available to our listeners. And this week it's our TMC's Radial Tire and Disc Wheel Conditions Digest. We're offering it for the special price of just $25 plus shipping and handling. To order, you can call our customer service line toll free at 1-866-821-3468. Mention radionemo.com and you can get it for that special price. Also, go to the web at tmc@trucking.org or our public-facing website, tmc.trucking.org, and you can get to us that way too. What's more, if you're an owner-operator or a small fleet, you got 100 or fewer power units, we'd love to have you as a member of TMC. You can join us for the discounted annual dues of just $150. And when you do that today, you'll get our 2-volume recommended practices manual and many other good benefits. So please do call that same toll-free number if you're interested in signing up with us. And as always, we remind our listeners at the top of the show, any TMC recommended practices we discuss reflect the consensus of our members. We offer them as recommendations only, and everyone must first determine for themselves if they are safe and appropriate for their operation. Please remember that TMC doesn't endorse any product, person, or service, and the opinions expressed in the show are those of the individual and not necessarily the opinion of his or her company, nor TMC, unless stated otherwise. And with all that out of the way, please welcome to the program this morning, Dan Shy. Good morning, Dan.
Hello, Robert and Dave. Thanks for having me.
So, retreads, what a great topic to have the day before Thanksgiving, because, they give back so much to the industry in terms of increased savings and, just increased or decreased impact on the environment. I think it's something under the order of for every 9 gallons it takes to make a virgin tire, the savings when it comes to a retread is like 1 gallon, something like that. Is that right?
That sounds right. One of the pillars of sustainability is to make your products last longer, and certainly retreading a casing multiple times is that sustainable pillar right there.
And so if you do a good job of your tire maintenance when you're going down the road, you'll be able to get more out of your tires through more retreads. And it's not unheard of with proper tire management to get, 2, 3, maybe even 4 retreads out of the same casing, particularly if you've got a conscientious program on tracking the casings and so forth. And we'll talk about that a little bit later into the program. But first, let's go talk about some of the latest developments on the retread side of the business. There's some things going on in the U.S. Congress about retreading truck tires, aren't there?
Right, and one of the most amazing things about it is both sides of the aisle are behind it. So
Well, that's
something
unusual.
to be thankful for.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, what is it?
So there's Emily Sykes, a Democrat from Ohio, and Darren LaHood, a Republican from Illinois, and they've introduced this House bill that would, if put into law, it would allow tax credits when you retread a tire. And it's no small amount. They say it's 30% or $30, whichever is less. So about $30 per tire that you would get a tax credit for.
That'll make a big difference in a lot of operations' bottom lines. Absolutely. Looking forward to some positive progress on that. Usually, when we hear about the U.S. Congress and retreading, it's usually bad news in a way, or at least attempted bad news, because they often get a bad rap. People see what we call gators on the side of the road, and they always attribute them to those bad retreads failing because of X, Y, and Z. But it really has nothing to do with the fact that they're retreads. It just has to do with the fact that if you see a gator on the side of the road, chances are it's a retread because there's more retreads out there than there are virgin tires, right?
That's right, but there's been several studies by NHTSA and University of Michigan. I can mention them, even though I'm in Ohio this weekend. But they did a study, good for them, on where do actually all these treads sitting on the side of the road come from, and both of the studies showed that there are more new, we call them virgin tire treads on the side of the road than there are retreaded materials. And it's just a matter of tire maintenance and maintaining your pressure and avoiding road hazards and so if you run a virgin tire under pressure, it's not going to hold up any better than a retreaded tire. Both of them have to pass federal standards. Mm-hmm.
So the good news is it's not retreads that are the problem. The bad news is it's all tires, but really it's not the tires, it's us, so to speak. It has to do with proper tire inflation. You have to have the right amount of inflation pressure for the load being carried. And that's the same with overload condition. You could have a certain inflation pressure that was good for the load going one way, but if you've overloaded it going back, that's, you need to adjust the tire pressure. And if you're not doing that, you're setting up yourself for some problems in terms of potential zipper conditions and a bunch of other negative impacts on those tires. And, retreads, again, they get a bad rap on that. And every once in a while we hear at TMC, you'll hear somebody in a certain district call up and say, what's wrong with these retreads? We have to explain the deal. Well, here's how you tell the difference if it's a retread or a virgin tire on the side of the road. Or here's a better one. If you can tell whether or not it was a retread at all. If you see the failure on the side of the road, the scrap of tire has wires sticking out of it, that's usually something because of underinflation, right? Because the belts in that radial tire have failed due to the excessive heat caused by the underinflation overload condition. If you don't see the wire in the scraps of the piece of tire, chances are it could be a retread, but they're very, very rare compared to the other potential. Isn't that right?
That's right. And again, it's what was the failure mode? Was it because it was underinflated or because you hit a road hazard? That has a lot to do with what it looks like in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some myths out there about retreads too. Some people think that you can't put retreads on the steer axle of a truck. That's not right, is it?
That's right. It's perfectly allowable, and the only regulation against it is on buses, multi-passenger buses, and so I think people get that understanding that they cannot do it, and they don't do it, and develop a habit of not doing it. But it is perfectly legal and permissible.
So let's talk about some of the basics that a fleet or a vehicle operator should know about getting their tires retreaded.
Well, I'll say if you don't practice retreading now and want to get into it, then wherever you're sourcing your tires from currently would be able to direct you to an appropriate service for retreading, and from there you'll find out all the logistics of collecting your tires and shipping them and getting them back, and knowing that you'll get your casings back on your wheels, and you could have the option of having a wheel program, and those would just be the basics.
Retreading in its simplest terms is the process of installing a new tread onto a used tire casing in order to maximize the casing life. And it's just basically like having a new set of soles or heels put on a worn set of shoes. We hear different terms for retreads. That's a more modern term, I think, but some of the old terms are recaps or remolds. Some people even use the term remanufactured tires. All of these mean the same thing, don't they?
They do, yes.
So there's some commonly used terms we hear when it comes to retreads. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about difference about them. Sometimes we hear things about, cold cure or hot cure. What does all that mean exactly when it comes to retreads?
Yeah. The whole thing about rubber is, in its raw form, it's kind of gushy and sticky, and so once the casing has already been manufactured, that's already been hot cured, but in the retread process, you're putting rubber on the outside of that is not cured, and so there's different methods of curing. The old-fashioned way of using oven, but there's also a chemical. I guess that's what they refer to as cold cure. Yeah.
It's amazing the different technologies that have developed for recent retread processes. It's not like it was back, say, in the 60s when you were doing bias tire retreads. It's so much more advanced. And the technology used to inspect the casings has really, really progressed quite a bit, hasn't it?
All right. There's all sorts of machines to do the non-destructive inspections. Just some of them: ultrasonic inspection, shearography, X-raying. So like in shearography, they would draw a vacuum and be able to see if there are any sorts of air bubbles in the tire that get expanded when it's placed under a vacuum. And then again, with the X-rays, you can see broken wires or separated belts and things like that.
So, what are some of the reasons why? What are some of the reasons a tire casing may fail a retread inspection? In other words, why can't you retread that casing?
So there's lots of things that can go wrong that you don't even see. And that's what those the machines that we just discussed would reveal. And all this is mainly due to improper maintenance, mainly inflation, but maybe overspeeding, overloading, that could cause damage to belts and have them separate. The bead of the tire, that's where it's going to pin up against the wheel flange and create the seal for the air. So you want that in pretty good condition. The tire inner liner could be damaged from tire removal tools or things like that. And all those things, if they're not repairable during the inspection process, then the tire casing would get rejected, and the term is return as received, and that's something no one wants to do. You're shipping a tire casing to someplace to have it remanufactured, retreaded, and if it just comes back the way it is, that's not good for anybody. So the fleet developed, really good methods of tire, not only maintenance but inspection before they even send it to be retreaded, and then it gets inspected further at the retread plants.
So you mentioned an interesting point. Can you repair casings during that inspection process? In other words, you can salvage some of them?
That's right. And so the retread technician, once the tread is buffed off, they look for more damages that maybe couldn't be seen, and they do what's called skiving. They do some grinding around the damage, and then right before the tread gets on, they fill it with uncured rubber, and that certainly strengthens that area.
You're listening to Tech Talk with TMC. We have Dan Shy with the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. We're talking about technology to be thankful for. That's retreads. Dan, we talked a little bit briefly earlier in the program about zipper failures or zipper ruptures. Let's talk a little bit about what those are exactly and what the causes are of that. And that's really what seems like the main reason why we see rubber on the road, isn't it?
It's one of the reasons, and it's actually a very dangerous condition, and people get injured all the time from it. And it's where a tire is operated at low pressure, and maybe it hits a road irregularity that causes the tire inner liner to pinch on the wheel rim flange, and it creates like a smile face on the inside of the tire inner liner. And that's where a qualified tire technician can inspect and see those indications of that damage. Because if it's not paid attention to, it's certainly possible that once it's assembled and inflated, that weak area will open up, and just like you can imagine someone unzipping where that smile is, that's where the zipper rupture occurs. Mm-hmm.
So you should be looking, for example, if you're doing your regular, walk around inspection, or if you're just doing maintenance on your tires, you should be looking for things like punctures, injuries, distortions, or ripples and bulges in the sidewall. Are these all indications you might have a potential zipper condition?
Possible, because all those would tend to allow you to operate at a lower pressure than you should, and that's what the root cause is. Mm-hmm.
So if you suspect a tire might have been underinflated significantly, let's say 20% or more of its target inflation pressure, should that be removed and evaluated, or what should you do with that tire?
Right. It's 80% or operating 80% of your prescribed pressure is cause for immediate removal of the tire and to have it inspected to see if there's any damage to, again, the inner liner or the bead area.
And this is where safety cages are so important for the tire technician in the shop, right?
Right. Not only zipper ruptures could cause a blowout, but there's other injuries that could not have been caught, and so you want to have that in the OSHA approved cage that can contain any kind of a rapid air loss.
When you put that tire in the safety cage, there's a procedure, right, in terms of how you inflate it to a certain level, and then to see if it's going to have a failure. Can you describe that process a little bit?
Right. So the best practice is to start an inflation with the tire and the wheel laying down flat. That way the bead gets a chance to evenly seat on the wheel flange. And so that should be about 5 psi. And at that time, you can stand it up straight and roll it into the cage and start the inflation. And there's rules about where you should be standing and how that where that cage should be in your shop and things like that. But and then you can certainly bring it up to a certain point and see if there are any bulges, or you can hear any air escaping, at which time you should address where those are located.
We talked about some myths earlier in the segment about putting retreads in the steer position on tractors. Why do fleets not use retreads in the steer position sometimes? What are some of the falsehoods out there that lead them to believe they can't do that or shouldn't do that?
Well, so you mentioned at the beginning of the show how long we've been doing this. It's over 100 years, and it took a long time to evolve, but now we have a pretty good process. So I would say that just the roundness or uniformity of the tire itself, the retread itself, maybe in the old days it was maybe a rough ride, and so today, they've ironed all that out, and they would give a comparable ride to the new tire. And then also, I'll say over the last 100 years, they've gotten better at adhering the tread to the casing, and that was always the stigma of a retread. That's why people think gators are retreads. That you certainly don't want any kind of delaminating occurrence on a steer tire when you're going down the road. So I just think that over the years, it's a stigma, and it has to be overcome by experience and education, I guess. But other than that, the whole process with the fleets, where they run a new steer tire, but then retread it to a drive tire and put the drive tire on. And then when that gets worn down, then they retread it again and as a trailer tire. So there's a cascading effect there of starting with a new tire and using it as much as possible.
The technology, as we said, in a retread plant has evolved so much in the past couple decades. It's really behooves somebody who's on the fleet management side, or even a vehicle operator, maybe take a inspection tour of a retread plant. I know a lot of the retread facilities will welcome folks to come in and see their facility. And in fact, TMC has a recommended practice on how to conduct a retread plant inspection. Is that a good idea? Is to go visit a retread plant to see for yourself how it's done?
Oh yeah, that would definitely give the truckers the comfort level of knowing, they have an expensive asset in this casing. They've taken care of it. They want to see where it's going to be for several days without them knowing what's going on with it, and that way they can see how the casing and the wheel can be traced through the whole shop and not mixed up with other people's assets. You want to keep your assets your assets.
Well, that's a good point. So if I'm a fleet and I'm needing retreads, and I take good care of my casings, I want to make sure I get my casings back. Will I get the same tire casing and wheel back with the retread?
Yeah, that's something that the retread plants have really ironed out, that process where they can tag the wheels and the tires and keep them identified wherever they are in the process. The wheels, a lot of times they may not look that good, and they have wheel reconditioning processes both with aluminum and steel. Aluminum can be put in basically a washing machine, and all the road grit and soot taken off of it. And then with the steel wheels, some now have the ability to, I'll say, strip all the paint and then recoat it to manufacturer specification. And the paint on a steel wheel, the thickness is really critical because you don't want it too thin, you don't want it too thick. And so they got some really good wheel refinishing processes now.
If I'm an operation, let's say I'm a small operation, I don't have the wherewithal to keep track of my casings and so forth, can I take advantage of retreads anyway?
Absolutely. Each retread would welcome you as their customer and work with you to, iron out their processes if they don't have that ability. And it's really, it can be very simple as putting a tag on a wheel. It's something that can be done. Mm-hmm.
And if I need a retread, for example, it's just like buying a virgin tire. I can buy a retreaded tire. Doesn't have to be from my own casing. It can be, somebody else's casing, I guess.
Right. There's racks of retreaded tires that are available for purchase as for the first time. And I guess if you did that, you'd have a casing that was proven to be retreaded. So that's something that you should be concerned with when you first buy a tire, is that the casing itself can be retreaded. And as a matter of fact, that going back to that House bill that they're trying to pass, it requires that the retreading occurs in the United States. And the whole point of that is, to increase jobs. That's the whole theme behind the bill. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And, that is great to have more jobs. Those are jobs that are good. They're here in the United States. And, that's what we need. We need more jobs here domestically. So that's another great reason to support this. Well, one of the things we can't support is more time for this segment. We've run out of time for this segment, but we have to take a break here and move on. But thank you so much, Dan, for joining us in the program. Hope to have you back on another Tech Talk with TMC real soon. And with that, I'm going to kick it back over to